So this is a response video to a live stream that I asked a group of YouTubers to do. They delivered, and I wanted to talk about some of the points they made because although I didn't necessarily disagree with what they were saying, it didn't necessarily cover all the bases, I suppose. And I will talk more about this topic later down the road, but this is solely a response video to that, and I hope I don't come off rude or anything. I'm just putting my perception, my views out there, my opinions. So the live stream was done by Becca, Angie, and Nat. I'll try to post a link in the description if I can. And they talked about pessimism. It was actually a request that I made, and they ended up doing it. And I wanted to kind of discuss some of the points that were made and put my own ideas out there. So the first thing that was said was from Angie, and she said, if you can't see anything positive, look harder. Now, I want to argue that people aren't linear like that. People don't just always see negative. People don't always see positive. That's not how people work. People are a lot more diverse and complex than that. How I like to view people and how I like to view myself is that there's the main personality, the person that you try to be, the person you put out, the attitude you try to adapt overall. So your main personality, and then you have sub-personalities, the kind of things that you express and feel during certain situations, and I like to view that way for everyone. Everyone is complex, no one is one way or the other. Humans are a lot more complex than that. Feelings are a lot more complex than that. Thoughts are a lot more complex. Everything is complex in my perception. So it's not fair to say that just because someone's pessimistic, they are unable to see anything positive. That's not true. I'm able to see positive things in my life and positive things around me. I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are good things in the world. It's simply that I edge towards negative thoughts more than positive because it's more realistic for me. In the situation I'm in now, in the things that I've experienced in the past, the kind of things that I dealt with in the past, I'm in the mind frame that things aren't always going to be good. Things are not going to turn out the way I want them to, and if they do, great, fine, I move on with my life, and I was wrong, but I always tend to prepare for the worst because it's more realistic for me. Things don't really ever go my way. And I think a lot of people can agree with that and kind of understand that. So it's not that there's an incapability of seeing positivity, it's more, you're more attuned to the negative side of things. And also something that I argued with Ryan, my boyfriend, for those of you who don't know, he thinks that I'm more realistic than pessimistic. I tend to kind of go in the middle of things. I don't like to go on one polar opposite or the next because being overly optimistic or overly pessimistic is not good. I think being balanced between the two, having a kind of mutual mind frame about things is better, I guess, because like I said, things are so complex. A situation is so complex. A problem can have positive and negative. So to be on one end or the other of the spectrum is not entirely fair. I try to be balanced, and that's what I've been trying to do. I'm not trying to adapt an overly optimistic personality or an overly pessimistic personality. I'm trying to center myself and find a good marriage between the two because I think that's important. I think everything in life needs to be balanced, probably hence why I have this tattoo. But that's another kind of point that I wanted to make is it's not entirely healthy to always be positive either, and I think you guys kind of didn't touch base on that at all, which is fine. But the next thing that I wanted to mention, Nat said, he said, pessimistic people are that way because it doesn't require work. And although I can see the thought process on this, that's not entirely fair. I think a lot of pessimism comes from experiences or situations that you were placed in earlier in life. Things that you tried to fix or try to help out with and it didn't turn out your way, so of course you're going to start doubting yourself. You're going to start to say, oh hey, I tried to do this and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, or it failed or whatever. I must be doing something wrong, and of course you're going to think negatively not only about yourself but the world around you. So I think a lot of it has to do with you have done work in the past, it never turned out, so now you expect that outcome. That doesn't mean I just sit on my ass all day and say the world is shit, I'm never going to change. No. I am trying to make the change. It's just that I don't see it very positively because I've not really made a lot of progress, and that's not from a lack of trying, it's from a lack of resources and a lack of knowing where to start and a lack of understanding of myself, if that makes sense. The next thing was Becca. She said this. She said, pessimism is safer. And although I don't disagree with that entirely, I don't think it's necessarily safer. I think that if you go on one extreme or the next, it's kind of a safety guard. If you're overly positive, that can cause a lot of issues for you because you're ignoring what really hurt you if you're just saying, oh, it's fine, at least this positive thing happened out of it. That's not always fair either. Just like being overly pessimistic is not always a good thing either because you're ignoring the positive side of things. Like I said, you gotta find the balance, the good marriage between the two. I don't think one extreme or the next is very good. And I think a lot of people try to ignore that and try to push themselves on the optimistic side of things. But that's not fair either because when something bad happens to you, you can't just put this happy smiley face on and pretend like everything's fine. That's not fair to you. When you're hurt, and you deserve to feel that pain and go through that grieving process. Otherwise, you're not going to learn what pain is. And in order to feel happiness, pain is necessary, and vice versa. That's just how I see it. The last thing that was said was from Nat, and he said, pessimism is a matter of perception. And although I don't disagree with him, I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's as simple to chalk it up as just perception. Just like I don't think it's fair to say optimism is a perception. I think a lot of it has to do with how you were raised, the kind of things that you experienced through your life, the type of people you were surrounded by as a child, or the kind of friends that you have. And honestly, I also think a lot of it has to do with your personality and the types of thoughts that you have, or maybe even disorders if you have depression. I know a lot of people with depression struggle with pessimism, or people with severe PTSD and that kind of thing. They struggle with pessimism, or like Becca said on the live stream, chronic pain. People who deal with those pretty severe issues tend to have a more pessimistic look on things because it's hard to deal with those big issues, especially when it's a lifelong thing and it's not really ever going to go away. It might get better, but it's not going to go away, if that makes sense. So, although I don't necessarily disagree with Nat, I just wanted to point out that I don't think it's that simple. The last thing that I wanted to mention that they didn't cover at all, but I thought personally was important, is that I think a lot of pessimism stems from a lack of control. When someone has control, they tend to feel more positive about a situation. But if someone is going through something that they really don't have a lot of control over and they have to trust other people, I think a lot of people tend to think more negatively towards things. So if you dealt with anything like I did and you didn't have a lot of control over certain things, you might see things more negatively, and you might doubt a lot of things because things never really turned out, if that makes sense. So what I've been saying to Ryan and what I've been trying to adapt the mind frame of is I am a realist, but I tend to pull towards more the negative side of things, and that's not necessarily bad. I'm not necessarily wrong, and you're not necessarily wrong either for having your views on things. It's just where I am right now, and I'm trying to find that marriage, because again, I don't think it's necessarily okay to always be positive, and I don't necessarily think it's always okay to be negative. There needs to be a good marriage between the two. So that's kind of my 5 cents into this, and I hope it made sense. I hope to talk about this more during other videos, so if there's anything that I said that confused you or you want me to cover more, let me know. This is more just a response video to that live stream, and I don't mean to be rude or anything or discredit you, and I did listen, and I do appreciate you guys taking my request into thought. It's just, this is how I thought about it, and I wanted to put it out there, because maybe you guys can learn and grow from it too. I don't know, because I did learn a few things and understand your perception. This is just my perception, so, and yeah. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Bye.